What's up, everyone? So, before I get to my content, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't, liking, and contributing in the comment section. It all helps and it all really goes far, and it is free and appreciated. Also, sharing the material with your friends. Thanks a lot. Ready? Here we go. All right, everybody. So, I'm going to do a book review, and it's a children's book, but it is the book called Unspeakable: The Tulsa Race Massacre. For a lot of you who don't know about the Tulsa Race Massacre, it was a part of, it really wasn't the Red Summer of 1919, which saw the country really ripped apart by a series of terrorist acts by the white community upon the black community, multiple attacks, riots, cities burned down. I would say the Tulsa Massacre is probably the most famous of those, but this did not happen in 1919. I believe it's 1921. And really, what this is it outlines the the hatred. What we saw was a tale of two cities in Tulsa, and I say two cities because segregation existed. So you could not marry outside of your ethnicity. You could not be in an establishment that was not for your ethnicity. So this is still black, white fountains, drinking fountains, movie theaters, things like that. And what we saw was the black community had really built themselves up to be very affluent. We're talking doctors, lawyers, furriers, movie theaters, multiple churches. All of these things were part of this, a bus system, all black owned. And they were flourishing in this town of theirs. And nobody really knows specifically what happened, to my understanding. But one day, a black young man who worked in a white building was allowed to take the elevator up so he could go to the restroom. And he got onto the elevator with a young white woman who then alleged that he had assaulted her. Nobody says what the assault was. And in those times, an assault could have easily been looking at her. An assault could have been saying something that she did not care to hear. And I don't mean in a perverse way. It was just that simple. And we know this to be true because a side story is the Emmett Till and Carolyn Bryant and her lies, and then what she admitted to later, I believe before she had passed, that she had lied about what Emmett Till had said or done to her. That said, this whole incident on the elevator sparked an outrage in the community, the white community. And when the man was arrested, the young black man was arrested, a mob formed, and they were going to try to extract him from the jail so they could lynch him. And armed black men showed up to defend him and to ensure that he got a fair shake. So that was dispersed, but I believe a handful of blacks and a handful of whites had died in that confrontation. But that wasn't enough. So the newspaper had put out an article, and nobody has the print of this, but it was said to have been entitled something to lynch tonight or something to that effect. And it was a call to arms where they were giving fear into the white community that the blacks were going to attack them first, and that we can't stand for our women to be accosted by black men, things of that nature. So they mounted a full-scale attack, military-style attack. Now, a lot of black and white men were returning soldiers from World War I, and I believe you were allowed to keep your weapons at that time. But because there were so many more white men than blacks, what they did is they created a military-style sweep as far as attacking on the ground. And if I'm not mistaken, they were also bombing from the air because a lot of the men were wealthy from oil in that area, so they had planes as dust croppers and things like that, but they used them to bomb from the sky. And when the fire department showed up, I believe they were threatened with their lives if they put the fires out. So essentially, you saw a city burning down, the people fleeing from it, and being shot to death as they were running. The initial reports were that 30 had died. When the American Red Cross came, they had tallied that 300 had actually been murdered in this terrorist attack. Um, this is not all full knowledge in this book. This gives a very light depiction, which I think is good, just as a starting place for young children. My daughter and I just read it today and went through it. And if you want more information, there are things on YouTube that you can look up, and I'm sure there are accounts in literature that you can look up that are much more detailed. But Black History Month coming upon us or not, this is part of history that we should be learning. And I say that because we learn about so many other things. We know we are aware of the Holocaust. We are aware of 9/11. We are aware of other atrocities that have happened in world history, such as the Holocaust that did not happen on American soil, and things like 9/11 that did happen. Now, 9/11 is much more recent, but the Holocaust lies somewhere in between. It's actually closer to the Tulsa riot than it is to 9/11. So if we remember these things, then we can remember all things that have happened in an inhumane way to the citizens of this country, or to the world. Um, Let me know your thoughts. I find this critical literature. And I find it's a piece of American history that should be studied, that should be known. It does not mean that it has to incite a particular feeling towards a certain group of people, just like when we teach 9/11, it means that we should not be in scorn of Middle Eastern people. Understanding this book does not mean that we should immediately take up arms or hate towards people who might have looked like the perpetrators. But it is an important part. I think that it's valuable for all walks to learn about. The same way the Trail of Tears. There's so, again, I could keep going on, but it's important for us all to learn. And why? Especially at a young age, because the sooner that we learn that we are all facing the same bully, possibly we have a better chance of uniting. Maybe not in this generation, but for the next generation or future generations. We can see that we're fighting the same bully inherently. And when it comes to racisms, when it comes to historical pain, when it comes to a lot of things, we have much more in common than we do apart. But a lot of times the powers that be would like to see us stay divided. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully everybody might have an ace up the sleeve, whether you are familiar with this piece of history, whether you're not, whether you're willing to look it up. Are you willing to share this with your children if you're not in the Black demographic? I think it's important. But I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully this finds everybody in a place, pursuit, or introduction of total health, mind, body, and soul. We'll see you very soon. Peace, love, unity, solidarity.